I own this company, and you are fired.
At 6:17 on a gray Thursday morning, Noah Bell was cutting the crust off a piece of toast because his 8-year-old swore the crust made it taste too tired when his phone started vibrating across the counter. He almost let it ring out. Mia was still asleep on the couch, under a blanket covered in cartoon planets, one sock half off her heel, one hand tucked under her cheek. Noah had been up since 5, packing her lunch, signing a reading log, moving a load of laundry to the dryer, and trying not to think about the electricity bill folded beneath the fruit bowl like a threat. He did not have room in his morning for unknown numbers, and he definitely didn't have room for St. Agnes Rehabilitation Center. He knew the number anyway. He stared at it until the ringing stopped. Then it started again. Noah wiped his hands on a dish towel and answered. "Yeah? Mr. Bell, this is Teresa from St. Agnes. I'm sorry to call so early, but your father is refusing transport." Noah shut his eyes. "Refusing transport to where?" "He has a board meeting downtown at 10. He says he'll only go if you take him." A short laugh slipped out of Noah before he could stop it. It didn't sound amused. It sounded tired enough to break. "Then I guess he's not going." There was a pause on the other end. Paper shuffled. Someone coughed in the background. "He specifically asked for you," Teresa said, softer now. "He's been dressed since 5:30. That irritated Noah more than it should have. Arthur Bell, who had missed birthdays, school plays, Noah's wedding dinner, and most of the final 6 months of Hannah's life, because there was always a call, a flight, a negotiation, a crisis only he could solve. Arthur Bell had apparently found discipline now that it inconvenienced his son. Noah looked over at Mia. Her hair was in her face. One of the braids he'd done the night before had come loose. Last night she'd cried over a math worksheet, then apologized for crying, which had hurt worse than the crying. Lately, all her apologies sounded older than 8. "Mr. Bell?" Teresa asked. Noah leaned against the counter. "Can't one of his assistants do it?" "He dismissed them." "Of course he did." "He said it was important." Important. Arthur's favorite word for everything that had once come before family. Noah glanced at the clock. If he hurried, he could get Mia dressed, fed, and to school, then drive 30 minutes out of his way to collect the man he still couldn't decide whether he hated or simply no longer trusted. He rubbed a hand over his face. If you've ever answered a call from the one person who taught you how disappointing love could be, then you already know why Noah stood there so long. And if you've ever been there too, you know that sometimes saying yes doesn't mean forgiveness. Sometimes it just means you're the only one left. "I can be there by 9, he said. When he woke Mia, she blinked up at him and asked, "Hospital day or normal day?" "Normal day," he said. That was the category they used now. Not good days, not easy days, just hospital and normal. She sat up, hair wild, and studied him in the way children do when they sense the weather of a room before anyone names it. "Grandpa Arthur called?" "Sort of." "Are you mad?" "No." Then, because she deserved better than the easy lie, he added, "Not at you." She accepted that with a solemn nod and let him redo her braid at the kitchen table. Mia had Hannah's mouth and Noah's serious eyes. On mornings like this, seeing both at once could knock the air out of him. At school drop-off, she leaned halfway out of the car before he could stop her and said, "If you see Grandpa, tell him I beat level 4 on chess." "I will." "And tell him not to be mean to nurses." Noah smiled despite himself. That one, I definitely will. Arthur was waiting in the rehab lobby, wearing a navy sweater, pressed slacks, and the expression of a man personally offended by weakness, even his own. The stroke had carved years into him in 6 months. He was thinner now, his silver hair cut too short, one side of his mouth slower when he spoke. But the eyes were the same, sharp, appraising, infuriatingly alive. He sat in a wheelchair with a wool blanket over his knees, tapping 2 fingers against the armrest. "You're late," Arthur said as Noah approached. "It's 9:03. Arthur checked his watch anyway. Still. Teresa, the nurse from the phone, gave Noah a look that managed to be sympathetic and amused. "He's been timing the clock on the wall." "I believe it," Arthur frowned. "I'm sitting right here." Noah bent to fix the footrests. And yet, somehow, still impossible to miss. For a second, Teresa looked alarmed, but Arthur only made a sound that might have been the beginning of a laugh and might have been annoyance. They headed for the parking lot under a sky the color of wet newspaper. Noah lifted the chair carefully over a crack in the sidewalk. "I can still feel pride, you know," Arthur muttered. "Good. That means the stroke didn't take everything." Arthur went quiet. Noah regretted it almost immediately, but not enough to take it back. Loading the wheelchair into the trunk was a practiced choreography now. Brakes, footrests, collapse, lift. The first time Noah had done it, Arthur had tried to instruct him through clenched teeth until Noah slammed the trunk and said, "You can either let me help or bleed to death on principle. Pick one." Arthur had let him help. On the drive downtown, traffic crawled. Arthur looked out the passenger window while Noah gripped the steering wheel too hard. The city slid past in cold light. Bus stops, scaffolding, a florist opening up, a man hosing yesterday's grime off a sidewalk no one would thank him for. "Did Mia win her chess tournament?" Arthur asked suddenly. Noah glanced over. "She didn't have a tournament. She was practicing." "You remember that?" Arthur kept looking forward. "I remember more than people think." Noah swallowed something sour. "She beat level 4 this morning." A faint nod. "Good." That was the problem with Arthur lately. Age and illness had not made him soft, but they had made him specific. He noticed things now. The tired rip in Noah's coat lining. The way Noah rubbed his chest when bills were due. Mia's obsession with impossible puzzles. These tiny acts of attention should have meant nothing. Instead, they felt like being handed crumbs after years of famine and being ashamed you were still hungry. "What's this meeting?" Noah asked. "Board review." "That doesn't explain why your driver couldn't take you." Arthur was quiet long enough that Noah thought he might not answer. Then he said, "Because I asked you." "That's not a reason." "No," Arthur said. "It's not." Bell Meridian headquarters occupied 12 polished floors of glass and stone on a corner where every parked car looked expensive and every person entering the building moved with the assurance of someone expected. Noah hated the place on sight. He parked in visitor loading because the accessible spots were full of luxury SUVs with tinted windows. Arthur noticed too. His jaw tightened. Inside, the lobby looked like a hotel that wanted to be mistaken for a museum. White marble, brass light fixtures, a living wall of green plants that probably had their own maintenance budget. Behind the reception desk hung a giant black and white portrait of Arthur from 20 years earlier, broad-shouldered, unsmiling, unbent by time or damage or regret. The woman at reception was in her 30s, sharp suit, sharper cheekbones, headset in one ear. Vanessa Cole, her gold nameplate said.
She was speaking quietly to a younger man beside her, both of them watching the revolving door as if waiting for someone important. Noah pushed Arthur toward the desk. Vanessa glanced at him, then at the chair, then back toward the entrance. Guest services is through the side corridor. We're here for the board meeting, Noah said. She gave him a thin professional smile, the kind that wasn't meant to be believed. The community caregiver luncheon is across the street at the hotel annex. No, he's expected here. Name? Noah opened his mouth, but Arthur rested one hand on the blanket and said nothing. Arthur Bell, Noah said. The younger man behind the desk snorted before he could help himself. Vanessa turned to him with a look that said, "Behave," but she was already smiling too. Of course, she said. Noah felt heat climb his neck. I'm serious. So am I. She leaned forward, lowering her voice into something falsely gentle. Sir, the chairman's meeting is private. If you need charitable assistance, there's a separate entrance around back, and staff there can... Noah stared at her. For a second, all the noise in the lobby seemed to step backward. The click of heels, the elevator chime, the hiss of the revolving door. Arthur's hand tightened on the armrest. Noah said, very carefully, "You think I'm asking for charity." Vanessa looked at his coat, the wheelchair, the tired face he hadn't shaved closely enough, and made the mistake of letting honesty show before kindness.
It was only a flicker, but it was there. Then she laughed, not loudly, not cruelly enough for a movie, just a short, breathy laugh of disbelief, as if the whole sight of him, a single father with grocery store shoes pushing an older man in a blanket through a lobby built for power, was too far outside her understanding to be real. I'm saying, she replied, that people can't just wheel in off the street and demand executive access. Noah didn't speak. He couldn't. Humiliation had a way of turning his body to stone. Because it wasn't only this moment. It was every bank appointment after Hannah died, when clerks looked past him and asked if there was another account holder. It was every school form with a line for mother he had to leave blank while Mia watched. It was the pediatrician once asking if there was a woman in the family who could help him manage bedtime anxiety. It was 1,000 tiny auditions for respect, all of them unpaid. Vanessa reached for the phone. I'll have security escort you. Arthur stood up. It was ugly and slow and obviously painful. The blanket slid to the floor. One hand braced against the chair, the other against the marble desk. His right leg trembled, and Noah instinctively stepped forward to steady him, but Arthur shook him off. The whole lobby froze. Arthur straightened inch by inch, face gray with effort, until he was standing in front of Vanessa. Not the 6-foot force from the portrait, not anymore, but something far more dangerous. A man who had been underestimated in his own house. The chairman, Arthur said, voice rough but carrying, is already here. Vanessa went white. The younger man behind her looked like he might faint. Arthur held Vanessa's gaze. You laughed at a guest. You profiled a caregiver. And you tried to remove my son from a building his family built. He took one difficult breath. Clear your desk. You're done here. Mr. Bell, I didn't realize. That is precisely the problem. Noah caught Arthur's elbow as the strength went out of him all at once. Arthur didn't protest this time. Around them, employees were suddenly interested in anything but looking directly at the scene. A man near the elevator stared so hard at his phone he nearly walked into a ficus. Vanessa's face had changed. The arrogance was gone. Underneath it was something raw. Fear, yes, but also shame arriving too late to be useful. "I'm sorry," she said, and Noah believed she meant it. Arthur sank back into the chair, breathing hard. "Not to me," he said. Noah didn't answer her. He didn't know how. An older woman in a charcoal suit hurried from the elevators. "Mr. Bell, sir, are you all right?" Arthur looked up at her. "Judith, get human resources, and have someone explain to me why the accessible parking is full of executive cars." Judith nodded once, like a soldier receiving orders on a battlefield, and vanished. Noah bent to pick up the blanket. His hands were shaking. In the private elevator up to the 12th floor, Arthur looked smaller than he had in years. "That was reckless," Noah said. Arthur kept his eyes on the brass doors. "She was wrong. You almost fell." She was still wrong. Noah stared at him. "You think this is about being right?" Arthur looked over then, and for the first time that day his expression cracked open into something Noah couldn't sort neatly into pride or anger. "I think," Arthur said quietly, "that no one gets to laugh at you for carrying more than they can see." The words landed so hard, Noah had to look away. The boardroom had floor-to-ceiling windows and a table long enough to make intimacy impossible. Men and women in tailored clothes stood when Arthur entered, surprise moving around the room in discreet waves. Noah recognized a few faces from old annual reports. He hated that he recognized them. "I won't stay," he said. "You will," Arthur replied. "I'm not one of your props." Arthur's mouth tightened. "Then don't sit where I can point to you." Judith pulled out a chair near the wall. Noah took it because leaving now would have felt like surrender to a battle he didn't even understand. The meeting began with numbers: revenue, occupancy, expansion, acquisition. Noah let them blur. He watched Arthur instead. The stroke had stolen speed, but not command. Arthur spoke more slowly now, and that made people listen harder. Twice he asked for figures to be repeated. Once he corrected a forecast from memory. Each time the room adjusted around him. Then a man named Julian Cross, the CFO, clicked to a slide about premium conversions, turning 3 middle-income rehabilitation centers into luxury recovery campuses with concierge services and private chef packages. Noah sat up. Arthur did not look at the screen. "No." Julian blinked. "Excuse me? We're not doing that. It's the board-approved strategy." "It was," Arthur said, "before I spent 4 months in one of our facilities, learning exactly what happens when care becomes branding." A silence fell so clean it almost rang. Arthur folded his hands. "This morning, I entered our headquarters in a wheelchair and watched executive services mock my son because he looked inconvenient and tired. That happened in our lobby. If that is who we are at the front desk, then I have no illusion about what we are becoming in the rooms with less glass." Noah felt every eye in the boardroom flick toward him and away. Julian cleared his throat. "With respect, that's an isolated personnel issue." "No," Arthur said. "It's culture. And culture is always leadership failing at a distance." Judith slid folders down the table. New packets. revised agenda. Arthur continued. Effective immediately, Bell Meridian is suspending premium conversions. We will expand caregiver leave, emergency childcare subsidies, bereavement counseling, and middle-income rehabilitation access. We will fund it by reducing executive bonuses, including my own deferred compensation. The room erupted. Not loudly. This was too expensive a room for shouting, but outrage and polished voices could still fill the air. Julian leaned forward. That will significantly impact quarterly confidence. Arthur turned to him. Then perhaps the market can learn patience. And who, Julian asked, exactly is advising this emotional pivot? Noah felt the question before Arthur answered it. My son, Arthur said. Noah stood up so fast his chair scraped. No, I'm not. The whole room looked at him now. Arthur, too. Noah's heart pounded in his throat. I didn't ask for this. I didn't tell him to say any of it. I'm here because your rehab center called me at 6 in the morning and said he was refusing transport. A few board members looked embarrassed. A few looked fascinated. Julian looked delighted, because chaos always looked useful to men like him. Arthur's face gave nothing away. Noah let out a breath that shook. But for what it's worth, if you want my opinion, caregivers don't need concierge meal plans. They need someone to answer the phone. They need bosses who don't act like grief is bad time management. They need to stop being treated like their lives got unprofessional just because someone at home got sick. The room had gone very still. Noah hadn't meant to say that much. He definitely hadn't meant for his voice to break on the word sick. But there it was now, too late to recall. Arthur looked at him with an expression Noah had waited half his life to see and now resented for arriving so late. Not approval, understanding. The meeting ended badly for everyone except Truth. By noon, Arthur had a headache. Julian was furious. Judith was already drafting damage control, and Noah was standing in Arthur's office with the door closed, wanting to break something expensive. You used me. Arthur, exhausted in his chair by the windows, didn't deny it immediately, which was worse. I asked you to bring me, he said. I hoped you might stay. Hoped I'd do what? Bleed in front of your board so they'd believe you found a conscience? Arthur flinched. It was small, but Noah saw it. You think because you fired one woman and made one speech, that fixes anything? No. Then what are you doing? Arthur looked down at his hands. Even now they were immaculate. No trembling unless he was tired. No visible apology in them. When Hannah got sick, he said, you asked Bell Meridian for remote flexibility. Noah went cold. That request never reached me, Arthur continued. Julian's division denied it at the regional level. Standardization policy, productivity risk. His mouth twisted around the words like they tasted rotten. I signed off on that policy years earlier. Noah laughed once, without humor. Congratulations, you found the paperwork. Arthur looked up. Hannah called me the week before she died. Noah's anger stalled. What? I was in Zurich. Arthur's voice thinned. I saw the voicemail. I listened to half of it. Then I told myself I would call back when the meeting ended. Noah couldn't breathe for a second. Arthur kept going, because maybe after a stroke you learned there were moments you did not survive by stopping. She didn't ask me for money, he said. She said you were drowning and pretending it was swimming. She said Mia was watching you disappear in real time. She told me not to fix anything. She said if I wanted to help, I should come sit in your kitchen and learn your daughter's favorite cereal. Noah pressed a hand against his mouth. I never called back before. Arthur stopped, swallowed, tried again. Before it was too late. The room felt suddenly too bright. All the rage Noah had carried for years had always had edges. This didn't. This was deeper and more shapeless and infinitely crueler. Not that Arthur didn't know, but that he had been told exactly how to love them and still failed to arrive. Noah stared at the carpet, because if he looked at his father, he might either hit him or forgive him, and he wasn't ready for either.
I hate that you get to become a better man because she died, he said at last.
Arthur's answer came without defense. I know. Noah left before Arthur could say anything else. Narrate this as a single-speaker audiobook in English, using a warm, controlled, slightly husky male tone at a normal, steady pace. Use emotional tags sparingly and naturally. That evening, Mia was at the kitchen table, building a fort out of library books and couch cushions, while Noah stirred boxed macaroni and forgot the cheese packet twice. "How is Grandpa?" she asked. He stood with the wooden spoon in his hand. "Difficult." "So, normal." He looked over at her and laughed, really laughed, the sound surprising both of them. Mia watched him carefully. "Did he cheat at chess again?" "No chess today." "You look like crying." Kids always skipped the polite lies adults offered each other. They went straight to the fracture line. Noah turned off the stove. "Maybe a little." Mia climbed down from the chair and crossed the kitchen in her socks. She hugged him around the waist with the full, uncomplicated force only children possess. "I miss Mom too," she said into his shirt. Noah closed his eyes. "Yeah," he whispered. "Me too." That night, after Mia was asleep, Noah found himself standing in the dark living room listening to old noises. The refrigerator hum, a passing siren, a floorboard settling under no one. Grief changed shape but never address. It still knew where to find you. At 9:48, there was a knock at the door. Arthur stood on the porch with a driver behind him and a plastic grocery bag in one hand. Noah just stared. "I brought cereal," Arthur said. Noah almost shut the door. Instead, he stepped back. Arthur walked in slower than pride would have once allowed. He looked around the small house as if memorizing it. The school shoes by the radiator, the framed finger paint sun Mia had made, the laundry basket by the couch, the dishes Noah had not gotten to. From the grocery bag, Arthur pulled a family-size box of the chocolate cereal Mia liked and held it like evidence. "She said level 4, he murmured. "I thought she deserved a prize." Noah rubbed a hand over his jaw. "You can't buy your way into a better memory." Arthur nodded once. "I know. I'm trying to arrive before there are no more chances to be ordinary." That line should not have worked. It almost did. Mia padded into the hall in dinosaur pajamas before Noah could decide whether to throw Arthur out. She froze, then smiled so hard it nearly broke something in both men. "Grandpa." Arthur's whole face changed. He crouched as far as his body allowed and opened one arm. Mia went to him without hesitation, because children do not yet understand how much history should weigh. "Did you bring me cereal?" she whispered, as though this were a sacred, private matter.
I did. Then you can stay 10 minutes.
Arthur looked up at Noah over the top of her head. Noah said, 9. Arthur came the next Sunday with a chessboard. The Sunday after that, he brought a toolbox and fixed the loose cabinet hinge Noah had been ignoring for months. He measured twice, worked slowly, swore under his breath when his right hand didn't cooperate, and accepted no praise. Noah watched all this with suspicion so ingrained it felt like a second spine. Then, one afternoon, Mia came home from school crying because another girl had asked why her mother never came to Parent Day. Noah knelt beside her bed for an hour, saying all the wrong things first. She wanted Hannah's voice, not his careful substitutes. When the tears finally wore her out, Noah sat on the hallway floor and stared at the opposite wall until Arthur, who had been in the kitchen teaching himself how not to oversteep tea, lowered himself into the chair beside him. Neither man spoke for a while.
Read this as a single-speaker male narration in a James-style audiobook voice, at a normal, steady pace, emotionally controlled and natural, using subtle pauses and restraint. Then Arthur said, "When your mother left, I told you she was visiting your aunt for work." Noah gave a hollow laugh. "You also told me not to mention it at school. I thought if I controlled the story, I could control the damage." "You controlled the silence." Arthur nodded. "I keep seeing all the places I chose efficiency over tenderness," he said. "At work, at home, with you." He folded his hands, looked at them. "I don't need absolution, Noah. I need accuracy." Noah turned to him. Arthur's eyes were wet, though he seemed unaware of it. "That little girl in there," Arthur said, voice fraying. "She should not have to become brave every day just to answer ordinary questions." Something in Noah gave way then. Not the whole wall, not even half, but enough for air. 2 months later, Bell Meridian opened the Hannah Bell Family Care Office on the 3rd floor of its downtown campus. Noah did not become an executive. He refused the title Arthur first offered, refused the corner office, refused the photo shoot Judith wanted for the local business journal. Instead, he signed a 1-year consulting contract with conditions so specific it made the legal department groan. Childcare stipends available within 48 hours, grief leave that could be taken in fragments, real people answering calls after business hours, manager training led by caregivers, not consultants. Arthur signed every line. Vanessa Cole was gone. Noah learned through Judith and not through gossip that Arthur had approved severance, 6 months of health coverage, and a letter that stated only that her employment had ended after a breach of conduct. Justice, not spectacle. Consequences, not public destruction. Noah respected that more than the firing itself. On opening day, caregivers from across the company came in wearing scrubs, work boots, office badges, winter coats. Some looked skeptical. Some looked exhausted. One woman cried because someone handed her a packet explaining how to apply for emergency home nursing for her husband without taking unpaid leave to do the paperwork. Noah stood near the back and watched the room fill. Arthur arrived in his wheelchair 10 minutes late, which would once have been unforgivable, and now merely human. Mia walked beside him in a blue dress, carrying the little silver scissors for the ribbon. "You ready?" Noah asked him. Arthur looked at the office door, the sign with Hannah's name, the people waiting inside. "No," he said. Noah smiled a little. "Good answer." When it was time, Arthur placed one hand on the wheelchair arm and started to push himself up. Instantly, Noah stepped in, not because he had to, not because anyone was watching, but because helping had finally stopped feeling like surrender. Arthur gripped his forearm. Noah steadied him. Together they rose through the awkward, painful inches of it. Mia beamed up at them like she had personally invented redemption. Arthur cut the ribbon with her, then cleared his throat and addressed the room. He did not give a speech. He only said, "We were late in building this. Some of you paid the price for that. I'm sorry. You deserved better sooner." That was all. And because he had finally learned the difference between performance and truth, it was enough. Afterward, as the room buzzed with conversation and cautious hope, Noah stepped into the hallway for a moment of quiet. Through the glass, he could see Arthur seated again, listening while Mia explained the rules of a chess trap in fierce detail. Arthur pretended to argue. Mia rolled her eyes. Judith laughed. Someone passed out coffee. Someone else filled out a benefits form with shaking hands and relief written all over their face. For the first time in a long time, the building did not look like a monument to power. It looked useful. Arthur turned then and found Noah through the glass. He did not wave. He did not mouth anything dramatic. He only inclined his head once. A small, imperfect gesture from a man who had wasted too many years on grander ones. Noah nodded back. Some losses never become fair. Hannah was still gone. Mia would still have hard school days. Arthur would never get back the version of fatherhood he had thrown away while chasing the kind of legacy that fit in magazines. None of that changed. But sometimes, healing didn't arrive as forgiveness all at once. Sometimes it arrived as a door being held open. Sometimes as cereal in a grocery bag. Sometimes as a man in a wheelchair standing up. Too late to erase the past, but not too late to become someone his family could finally bear to meet where the light